Chapter 45. Perhaps it was merely the freedom provided by the segmented design of the keyframe, frustration from seeing the same people day after day, the constant stress from wondering if, or when, the former owner of the array would return, or simply that everyone had become absorbed in their own projects. But one thing was certain. Over the weeks that followed their victory over Cyberop Gregor's forces, the crew had slowly grown apart. Callie had considered them all friends, but they had all been thrust together due to varied circumstances. Had the connections between them merely been illusory? The twins were slowly learning to communicate with the nautiloid. Callie didn't like that they were treating the baby weaver like it was their pet, but her objections seemed to fall on deaf ears. Jake was using his translator less and less every day. For weeks, he'd spent almost every waking hour with the clether. There were obvious differences in their dialect and pronunciation, but they'd managed to work their way through it. Callie couldn't help but wonder what his real motivations were, but knew there was no point in asking. Tyrell had become a surrogate father figure to her throughout their journey, but even he had little time for her. He'd become obsessed with the strange new technologies of the keyframe. Sin Tholo was avoiding her and had been badgering Tyrell for weeks. He wanted the E2 woman disconnected from the ship and returned to her homeworld for a proper burial, but that couldn't happen until Tyrell could run the ship completely on his own. Naturally, Gowrie had responded badly to Sin Tholo's obvious obsession. She was convinced that Sin Tholo was in love with the woman in the machine, regardless of reassurances to the contrary. Then there was Shinji. He'd spent weeks following Callie around like a lost pup until she'd finally snapped at him. She wanted to be rid of him, but that would have to wait. Callie felt like everything was falling apart around her. The whole time, the Darkling was there, a lurking shadow, ever silent, always watching. Near the end of the 5th week, Tyrell requested that they all meet in a module they'd come to refer to as the Garden. Callie sighed as she stepped off the platform. She'd spent most of her morning taking inventory of the remaining items in Thal's vault on the Regicide 1. Most of the blue-skinned woman's collection had been gutted by Jake to circumvent the ship's computers after the cyberpath hacked Tyrell's brain. It all seemed so long ago now. Callie had done her best to preserve what was left, but things kept coming up missing or broken. There was already enough tension among the crew without her throwing around accusations. The strangest part was that most of the items that had vanished had no real purpose: jewelry, gemstones, bars made from exotic alloys, and other items could be easily traded when visiting places that didn't accept conventional currency. She wasn't happy that the psionic amplifier was gone, but there was no way to track it down. Today's inventory had her on edge, to say the least. The changeling mutation core was gone. She hoped someone had simply taken it, but worried that Iron Nightmare might have found a way to reconstitute itself. It seemed unlikely, but the possibility worried her. The intraship transit system had deposited her near the center of the biosphere. Crops from a dozen worlds were arranged in rows extending into the distance. The glassy dome overhead was lined with lights that simulated natural sunlight. When she arrived, the lighting was just beginning to cycle into night mode. The control systems that managed the environment were housed within a structure resembling a gazebo, only about a dozen yards from the entry portal. She glanced over her shoulder to make sure the Darkling was still following her before making her way toward the building. While she wasn't sure what the enigmatic creature's opinion of her was, it had come to trust her enough to ride in the shadow underneath her hair. It didn't seem to have any weight or mass, so it wasn't an imposition. She was the last one to arrive. The crew was sitting quietly on benches near the center of the structure. The twins looked like they were in the middle of an in-depth non-verbal conversation. "Nice of you to join us," Tyrell chuckled dryly. "I'm not in the mood," Callie snapped. Jake said something in his own language. The only word Callie was able to pick out was Tikariktit, which was the clether's name. Everyone else just called her Tiki. There really wasn't much point in even attempting to pronounce words from the Loctarian language, never mind the Clether-specific dialect. Turn on your translator, Shinji smirked. Jake chittered unhappily as he tightened the strap that held the module around his neck and activated it. My apologies, Jake said. Tiki clicked softly. Callie smiled over at them. He was using the best match feature again. Judging by the Clether's emotional reaction, Jake's actual words had been far less polite. Well, Syntholo said impatiently, we're all here now. What's this all about? I'm done reworking the software. I'm ready for another attempt to take control of the ship, Tyrell said. Jake, I'll need your help disconnecting the central computer core. I wish you'd stop calling her that, Syntholo sneered. She's a person, not just a piece of the ship. You're the one who insisted we find a way to control the ship without her, Tyrell snapped. Disconnecting her from the ship will kill her. Please excuse me if I'd rather not apply too much agency to a person that you're demanding I murder. Her brain was hollowed out like a melon, Syntholo sneered. That's no way to live. It's not murder, it's a mercy. It doesn't matter how much sugar you pour on it, Tyrell scoffed. There may be some way to restore her mind. A few minutes after we disconnect her from the computer she'll die, and we forfeit any possibility of saving her. Her mind is already dead, Syntholo said angrily. It's time to let her body follow. Let me take her remains back to her homeworld and put her to rest. I will assist you, Jake interrupted. I will take responsibility for the death of the girl's body. She has a name, Syntholo said softly. I don't want to know her name, Tyrell sneered. The more she becomes a person to me, the harder this becomes. Let it go, Callie said firmly before Syntholo could reply. He looked down to avoid her gaze. I wish you'd stop obsessing over that dead Terran, Gowri grumbled softly. If any of the ship systems don't come back online after we restart, let me know immediately. The communication systems should remain active during the transition. Once you've taken control of this ship, Jake said, Tiki and I will be leaving. Both of you, Callie said with a start. Jake bobbed his head. I've contacted my government. Our brothers and sisters have been away far too long. We'd like to invite them to finally come home. When the old Cletherian queen declared me her successor, Callie said as she broadcast her thoughts to the collective, through the Weaver. I was charged with the duty of protecting and guiding all of the races of Cletheria. I worry that simply standing by while a group so vital to the collective seeks to leave us, would be betraying the legacy of the queen. Yet I don't feel it would be right to attempt to impose my will upon any species among us. Tiki chittered in a deep, forceful tone. The decision has been made, Jake said. If your government plans to merely use them, Callie warned, there will be consequences, but that's not my primary concern. That's not the case, Jake insisted. I don't, yet, have the reach of the former queen, Callie admitted. I need the Clether to understand this. There is a second queen. I worry that the false queen may attempt to seize control of any Clether near her sphere of influence. She's not like me. She's full of greed and hatred. She doesn't seek cooperation, but domination. Tiki spoke. Her thoughts filtered through the collective. She understood Callie's concerns. Jake bobbed his head. Tiki and I will go ahead, just the two of us, to prepare the way for the others. What do you plan to do if the pretender to the throne becomes aware of Tiki's presence? Callie asked. They exchanged glances but didn't respond. Would a psionic dampening field help? Shinji asked. Do you have one? Callie teased. I could reach out to your contacts, Tyrell said with a shrug. We can look into it, and order one if possible. Callie looked over at Jake and Tiki, and said, I don't know. What do you think? Her fighter is controlled through telepathy, Jake said. Then take a different one, Syntholo chuckled. There are a half-dozen Corvette-class ships just floating around out there, waiting to be claimed. Take your pick. Most of those ships are damaged, Tyrell chuckled. One of them is fully intact, other than the drive. We're close enough to the Pilth Stargate that you shouldn't need it. Tiki agreed to the proposal long before Jake did. It seemed fairly obvious the Loctarian government had at least as much interest in new technologies as they had in long-lost cousins. I'll make the arrangements, Tyrell said with a smile. If you're going to do that, Callie said, contact Alliance Arms and ask Broha to ship my armor along with the rest of the delivery. It should be ready by now. Should I ask her to send you some clothing that actually fits? Tyrell snickered. Callie frowned. I know Thala's old clothes are a little big on me, but they're not that bad. Are they? Sin Tholo turned his head away, Tyrell laughed, and Shinji bit his lip. Seeing as they don't have the nerve to answer. Gaori squawked before being interrupted by the twins. Mama is pretty, Yari said as if he were defending her honor. Even when she wears ugly dresses that drag on the floor, Ziku said adamantly. Gaori wordlessly motioned to them while watching Callie's expression. Fine, Callie snarled. I don't suppose they can send a hairdresser along with the rest of the supplies, Shinji teased. First my clothes, now my hair. Is there anything you don't have a problem with? Well, I think we're done here, Tyrell said. Actually, no. There is something I need to bring up, Callie said sternly. What? Tyrell said with frustration. Popcorn, Callie said and then sighed with relief as they all gaped in confusion. I don't understand, Gaori squawked. You're not the only one, Jake noted. A number of things have gone missing over the past few weeks, Callie explained. It's been more irritating than troubling, until today. What changed? Sin Tholo asked. Callie studied them as she spoke. There was a changeling mutation core stored in my vault on the Regicide one. It's vital that I find out what happened to it. If one of you took it, I need to know. If Iron Nightmare somehow manages to constitute himself, we're all in danger. There's no chance of that, Tyrell scoffed. Can we be certain of that? Callie asked as if she were making an accusation. Yes, he chuckled. I may not have finished my research, but I can tell you this much. Once you remove a changeling's core, it's not coming back. I'll just have to take your word on it, Callie grumbled, but I'd be happier if I knew where that core went. Can't you just buy another one? Shinji asked. Sin Tholo laughed. You make it sound so easy. It's hard enough to find a changeling, let alone someone that killed one and is willing to sell the core. She found that one, Shinji scoffed. Didn't find it, Callie sneered. I earned it. Are you saying you killed a changeling? Jake asked. Two, Callie said irritably. I've heard stories, Sin Tholo said, but I've never actually seen a core. What do they look like? It's a silvery ball, about this big, Callie said as she held up her hand as if she was gripping a fist-sized object. Ziku and Yari shifted uncomfortably. Callie turned. Is there something you two would like to tell me? No, Mama, Ziku said at the same time Yari attempted to apologize. Ziku elbowed Yari. Yari backhanded Ziku. The brothers stood, snout to snout, snarling. Enough, Callie roared. The twins usually seemed so single-minded. Had the anxiety level on the ship even affected their relationship, or was there something else going on? Mama, Yari said urgently, is it dangerous? Ziku growled deep in his throat. Ziku, Callie snapped, what did you do? It was his idea, Yari said insistently. There weren't any more pretties to feed Shelly, so he took it. You had it in a special place, so I told him not to touch it. Is this true? Callie asked Ziku with a steely glare. Ziku stood, staring at her defiantly. Please, Callie said, tell me you didn't feed it to the Weaver. Yari head swayed slightly as he shifted his feet. How many times have I told you, Callie roared, that creature is not your pet. We named her Shelley, Ziku growled. If you paid more attention, you'd know that. Since we came here, you've been too busy for us or her. I hate this ship, Yari said softly. Ziku, Callie glowered. I know you're upset, but this is important. Did you feed the mutation core to Shelley? He didn't answer. Lady Darkseid, Tyrell said cautiously, you need to calm down, now. You know what one of those cores can do, Callie sneered, without breaking eye contact with the twins. Maybe I do, Tyrell said in a voice full of compassion. But they don't. Can't you see what's happening here? You've been different since you came back from that Cletharian ship. I don't know what happened over there, but this isn't you. What's that supposed to mean? Callie snapped as she finally looked away from Ziku. Maybe this is partly my fault, Tyrell scowled. I've been so busy dealing with this ship that I haven't had the time for anything else. I've had enough of people trying to tell me what to do, Callie sneered. I can make my own decisions. It's my life, and my choice what to do with it. Stop deluding yourself, Tyrell yelled. The moment you invite someone else into your life, it stops being just about you. Stop acting like a selfish child. Everyone here has put their faith in you. We want to be able to trust and believe in you, but that's not any more unconditional than the friendship we've tried to offer you. You've been wandering around in a haze, ignoring everything that's been going on around you. It's been so tense around here, Callie said defensively, I didn't want to make things worse. Tyrell smirked and shook his head. What? Callie asked indignantly. Did you ever stop to think why we're all so stressed? Tyrell said in a voice full of pain and frustration. Did you ever stop to ask yourself how your actions affect morale around here? I don't have to listen to this, Callie scoffed. Princess, Gowrie said nervously, I think you should. I don't see the point. Jake began. Thank you, Jake, Callie said as she glared at Tyrell. She's not the person we thought she was, Jake continued. I refuse to believe that, Gowrie insisted. It can be hard for a solitary hunter to accept help. She just needs more time. She's had time, Jake said. After spending years on the run, she offered me a purpose. She has so much potential but refuses to do anything. I found a new purpose, and I suggest you all do the same. I don't need this, Callie roared. What I do need is to know what happened to that mutation core. Yari let out a high-pitched burbling noise and then ran to the transit platform. What's his problem? Callie asked angrily. It's okay, Gowrie soothed. Callie turned to face the avian woman but was dumbstruck as she watched her consoling Ziku. The massive fuzzy reptile was trembling and struggling not to cry as he held Gowrie tight. The woman had almost vanished into his thick white fur. Callie looked around in confusion. That was just cruel, Shinji whispered. A failed attempt at cruelty, Callie mocked. I don't see why everyone's being so melodramatic. I wasn't talking about them, Shinji said with a start. What's the matter with you? Think before you speak. We all like the twins and have been trying to help them as much as we can, but they don't want us. They want their mother, Jake continued as Shinji paused. Who has been being a self-centered? Gowrie began but was swiftly silenced by a stern look from Tyrell. Sin Tholo cleared his throat before speaking. Jake and Tyrell, disconnect the E2 from the ship. Gowrie and Shinji, bring Ziku downstairs. Help the twins understand that their mama is just under a lot of pressure and didn't mean to hurt them, again. She just needs some time away so she can get her head together. Just where do you think I'm going? Callie snickered. You're coming with me, Sin Tholo said in a commanding tone. I'm taking you to meet Kaylani after we bury my old friend. You need the guidance of a woman who knows how to handle the burdens of leadership. Where is my mutation core? Callie screeched. You're wasting your time, Jake clicked softly as he spoke. Please, Syntholo urged, trust in me. Just give me 2 weeks. I promise you, Mistress Kailani can help get her back on course. Just give me 2 weeks. Why do people insist on telling me who to be? Callie sighed. Damn it, Tyrell grumbled. That's not what we want. We just want you back. Chapter 45. Perhaps it was merely the freedom provided